Hi, I'm Rachel here with my cat Leia, and this is the Book-Hoarding Booktube tag. I was tagged by Curtis of Curtis Books and Films. We're about to do a buddy read together once I get my Holden from the library. Holding up the works here. Very excited for that. Before I start the questions of this tag, I thought I'd show some of the symptoms around me that are implicating my book hoarding. I mean that in a fun-loving way. I know that hoarding is a serious condition. And in fact, Biblio Atlas, who started this tag, linked to a helpful article in Mayo Clinic for people who are actually suffering from the real disease, so I'll definitely link to her video down below as well. But for the purposes of this lighthearted video talking about books, I thought I'd use my new hand camera to show you something. This is actually what my camera was sitting on before. These are books that I recently bought or were given as a gift for my birthday, and I'm going to haul them soon. But at the moment, I don't necessarily have a place for them on my bookshelves, so I thought, well, I kind of need a tripod for this new thing, so they're just sitting here. I do actually have this basket of books that I intend to unhaul. I have some on my shelves too that I could easily get rid of. It's just a matter of me deciding where exactly I want to send them and getting on with it already. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get on to the actual questions of the tag. I have them over here on my iPad, so I'll look over at them from time to time. Question 1 is a book that you should get rid of but can't for some reason. I've come back to this one a couple of times. It's Here Be Dragons, edited by Bill Fawcett. It's a book of short stories that pertains to Dragon Con, a convention that I used to go to. Not very good short stories, didn't enjoy them, although I wrote a lot of notes in the stories as I was reading them, so I feel a little iffy about getting rid of the book. Not only, I guess, because of the notes, but because I really have nostalgic feelings about Dragon Con, and so I still like seeing the cover, I guess, or knowing that it's there. I should really just find a better book about Dragon Con and then have that one to signify my experiences there. Question 2 is, what book or edition do you covet or dream of owning? I'm not usually very picky about book editions, although I guess there are exceptions. For example, with Becky Chambers' sci-fi novel, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, and its sequel, the covers are just so much prettier in the UK edition than the US edition, so I did go ahead and buy this one and the other book through Book Depository so I could get those pretty covers. I also am looking into nice editions of my favorite Bronte books that I could buy that I find visually appealing and that I hope to put on a special Bronte shelf. So I suppose in a way it definitely is as much for the aesthetic of it as anything else. But for most of the books I buy, I really am mostly interested in them for what's inside the books, I promise. Although, who doesn't love a lovely cover? Let's be honest. Question 3 is safety among clutter. Which book makes you feel cozy? I thought I should go to a favorite childhood book for this one, the things that I've read as a child and a teenager. You know, sometimes I do feel like reading back then was more magical than reading now. That doesn't sound so great, but insofar as it goes, I thought a cozy, nostalgic read would be this one. It's Emperor Mage by Tamara Pierce. It's the 3rd book in her Immortal series with its lovely 90s cover. My favorite of her heroines that I've read, Dane Sarasi. I think this was one of the first fantasy series that I came up on by myself and really enjoyed. And in 2013, she was at the National Book Festival and she signed it for me. So number 4 kind of fits in with that, nostalgic memories. Which book has a stories? Well, one of my collections of books that I'd like to keep are my signed books that I went to the author at an event and got it signed. I mean, some of those events are much more personal than others. I always think of the dreaded Judy Blume story where I was one of the last people in line and I said something dumb and she probably just wanted to get out of there ASAP. But some of the encounters are definitely much more unique and personable. And I feel like out of all of my signed books, maybe this one has the most unique story behind it. This is The Mystics of Mile End by Sigal Samuel. It's a story about Kabbalistic Jews in Canada. When she signed it for all of us after doing a presentation on her family's Jewish history in India, actually, then she signed her books for us. She did a parlor trick that her father taught her about writing Kabbalistic incantations, or I think that would be the word for it, inside the books, where she asked us what we desired most, and then she wrote in what might get us that. And at first, when I came up there, I tried to be altruistic and say, oh, I want world peace, and then she gave me a think of something more specific and selfish for you. And I thought, okay, I want the story I have out on submission to be accepted somewhere. So this is the amulet that she wrote out for me. Not sure you could see it all, but I know of everything on here. The only thing I know for sure what it is these, these 3 letters, which spell my name in Hebrew. So there's that. Number 5 is, don't touch my stuff. Which books won't you lend out? I've definitely been getting a little stingier, I guess, with lending out books. You know, it's always kind of difficult to get them back. Although my general MO lately has been that I give books often to my mother and my sister and sometimes my father after I read them. And if they don't give them back, maybe that's a good thing, because it is a way to declutter my shelves. So oftentimes that is what happens. The problem, of course, is when they ask for a book that I've decided is really one of my serious to-keep books. And that happened to me recently with my mother. She asked if she could borrow my copy of Elena Ferrante's The Story of a Lost Child. And I admit that instead I found a copy for $2 at a used bookstore, so I bought her own. And this one remains with me, safe on its shelf with the other 3 books. And number 6 is, which book is so delicious that you'd cancel plans to read? And I definitely have some books that I enjoy reading more than other books, as does everyone, I'm sure, but unfortunately I don't have enough plans really for this to be an issue. I mean, it's pretty rare for me to have plans, so usually when something is actually in play as a plan, I try to keep it no matter what I'm reading. Oftentimes it does come to pass that as a weekend is coming up or something, and I think to myself, I could make plans with such and such, or I could just do some reading and writing at home, that I choose the latter. So yeah, it's not tied to a specific book, it's tied to my lifestyle, really, that I do like reading and writing at home. And it's really more of an issue of me wanting to be more social more of the time than I am, and having to think of factoring that in more in the future, hopefully. And finally, question 7 is, which book did you buy completely unplanned? Another one of my quirks is that I tend to like to visit indie bookshops wherever I go, and then I want to support them and buy a book. And for a while I looked for local fare at these indie bookshops. So about a year ago I was in San Diego in a bookstore, and I bought Legends of Californios, a very local book to commemorate that experience. But the problem is that this book isn't all that good. The writing isn't really good, the stories aren't really good, and I guess it harkens back to that which books you should get rid of but don't feel like you can, and for me it's this one too, because I'm like, it still is really pretty rare and reminds me of this experience, and oh, I think I'm gonna keep it. But in the future I do think when I go to new indie bookstores, I'm just gonna go with what's on my regular TBR from now on. Books that I've thought about pretty closely, that I really want, usually, and not take so many chances on things like this and get into this sort of situation again. So that about covers it for me. Thanks again to Curtis for tagging me, although I kind of feel embarrassed after some of those answers. As for who I tag, I think I'm going to go with Weston at Spaghetti Weston. If you're at all interested in doing this tag, I'd love to hear your answers. So thanks for watching, everyone. Happy reading. Take some of those books off of your piles and read them, and I'll see you next time.